But weather events like what's going on in California, what happened in North Carolina, parts of Georgia, parts of Florida, what happens to Florida all the time, what happened to Hawaii, all these things that happened in the past year are very, very big events that could happen at any time. That can happen anywhere. Natural events can occur anywhere on this earth that you reside. And it's going to be things that you don't expect. So you're not going to be totally prepared. But you want to prepare for what you can control, like having heat and the ability to cook and water to drink and food. Those are the four main things. You definitely want security to protect those things, but those are the four main things you need to think about. All right, this looks like a good place to talk with you guys today. Welcome back to the channel. Here we are on our snow lark, if you want to call it that. In my area, we don't really get a lot of snow. I kind of invested in some things. I had some other things coming that didn't show up, but either way, we made do with what we got. And I feel like this, albeit it has some issues, it can be a pretty effective tool for camouflaging yourself in the snow. I'll talk about our rifle more later. Set it right here. I know I'm breaking the cardinal rule in the woods, but as you can see, this is what I was talking about. It's a snow poncho. More or less a sheet. It's a copy of the German surplus. I recommend if you can get the German surplus, get it. But let's talk a little bit about lessons learned this past weekend here in the Southeast. With the snow begin in 2025, if you will, here in the Southeast, I'm going to go over some lessons learned with it. One of the things I want to talk about big time is 2 is 1, 1 is none. What do I mean by that? There they are. They're all behind the occupied wall of the HOA, occupied by unconstitutional force that's making them conform to their ways. Too bad we don't have the ways to liberate them. Let's continue with the lark. The biggest issues I had going into this, because we knew it was going to be bad weather. That's one of the big things we knew. Give me a second. I'm going to take my little snow poncho off. You can just film it. Going into this whole weather event, and this is something that the channel's about. The channel is about gear like what we have here, you know, prepping. So stuff like this, shooting. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's a big passion of mine. But we also want to talk about being prepared, because this stuff right here means jack shit. It means exactly jack shit if we're not prepared. 2 is 1, 1 is none. One of the issues I had going into this whole ordeal is with my home, I have secondary heating, which is liquid propane. We have gas logs, some propane heaters, different things like that. We have primary electrical heating, just like most modern houses do. But we also, as a backup, I like having the ability to burn liquid propane as a heat. You can also use it as a cooking source. We filled up one of our tanks just in preparation because, you know, a long time ago in this area, we had what was called a blizzard, and it was pretty devastating. There was power outages. And one of the things with this weather event is it could go either way. We could have all this white stuff on the ground that we have here now, or we could have had ice. Ice bothers me. Ice is not fun to LARP in, hard to travel in, hard to walk in. And ice also weighs down your power lines and puts a stress on the electrical grid, because it can cause transformers to blow, it can cause trees to drop, can cause power poles to drop. I was trying to prepare for the worst, so I wanted to make sure in the event that our electricity went out that I had a method to heat my home. And so hooking up my tank, I noticed a smell of propane, and I checked it along with my father, we checked the regulator and it was leaking. We spent 2.5 hours that evening before the storm hit. That is on me for doing that, getting the gas and doing that late. I should have did it earlier. But I mean, it happens to everybody. Things slide by and you're like, man, this is something you've done 1,000 times and there's not going to be a big deal about it, right? But we noticed it was leaking and we drove through basically 2 towns looking for this regulator that used to be extremely commonplace. It's a residential gas regulator. I mean, I'll throw in a picture somewhere around here. Residential gas regulator, nobody anywhere around town had. And what we're running into is the people that probably had it, gas companies, would probably carry these things, keep a stock of them, right? They all closed early. Mind you, the first of the snowflakes or the ice or whatever wasn't supposed to be here for 12 hours. We could not find this regulator, so we had to do without the ability of secondary heat. And we, for an extent, we would have used it as primary heat because it got pretty cold, and it is pretty cold. We need to think about Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I never in my life would have thought this regulator would have went bad and started leaking. I mean, that's a serious safety hazard, right? So maybe in the future, maybe I keep a rebuild kit for it. It's not really that expensive, so maybe I get my replacement, and then down the line, I get another replacement for the high stage and low stage, keep them put up somewhere safe, and I have those, because these are essential items in a disaster, right? These are the things you need to do when some kind of situation like this, rainstorm, flood, snow, anything like this happens. You want to keep a check, almost like a debriefing of things that you probably could have done better, things you maybe need for the next time around. Moving into number 2 is salt. Having salt to melt ice and having a good snow shovel. And I'll roll in some footage here and there, whatever of that. But having that, I had a snow shovel that made things immensely easier for me to traverse my driveway. I live a little bit on a hill, nothing extremely crazy, but it has some slope to it. So slope to it to where a 4,000 or 5,000 pound vehicle is going to yeet down it into a highway. So that is something that we discovered when we were exiting our driveway with snow. I had a snow shovel. Me and my son were able to move the snow out of the way to make the driveway safer to traverse. That's things you need to think of, is having something that can move snow and things like this out of the way. One of the greatest things, and I'll roll in a picture footage or whatever of the snow shovel that I use, snow shovel. It's actually like a job shovel that you can use, that I bought whenever I was doing home remodeling in my house, that you can just scoop up the crap from demolition, whatever. We use it to clean out the garage, to clean out our carport, to clean out our porch. It's almost like a giant dust broom scoop that you can scoop snow out of the way. I'm gonna roll in footage of that. That's something every homeowner or prepper household should use. Like, you can use it to move a lot of material at a quick time, and it does perfect with snow, especially on your driveway. If you're like me, you want to have a mode to egress if you need to leave your house. Like, I'll one up you with another thing why you might need to leave your house. We had an instance not too far from us, a town over, where a gas truck, a propane truck, wrecked into some trees. Yeah, and that was fine, nothing was leaking, but the recovery tow truck trying to pull this truck out, something happened. The propane truck came unhooked. It slid back down further than it was, rolled more, hit a tree harder, and cracked the tank. And then you had a freaking giant ass propane truck bomb sitting out there, and they had to evacuate these people. Guess what? They had to leave their home or suffer the consequences of being blown up. That's the thing I'm getting at, is there may be reasons unbeknownst to you that you may have to leave your area. Having the means to clear your driveway and keeping ice off of it or minimalizing the ice, especially if you live on a slope, is imperative. And the next thing I want to go into, because we're talking about mode of transport and egress, is learning how to drive in the snow. Having a capable vehicle, whether it be a decent front wheel drive, I recommend at the bare minimum all wheel drive. And the best is like a newer modern 4x4 or a 4x4 you're experienced in driving, because you're going to get the most traction. Now, I'm not talking a mud truck or a Rubicon with lockers and all this, because lockers in the snow and in ice kind of suck. If you don't know what you're doing, you can be sitting there hooking all four and just start drifting off into the shoulders. So just a regular 4x4 system is perfect for driving in the snow and learning how to drive in the snow. And something that I feel like in a way is similar to snow, is like driving in a mud or a seriously muddy area. It's not completely the same, so don't take it as that, but learning how to traverse in the mud or in slippery, muddy terrains is a pretty good kind of precursor to learning how to drive in snow and ice, especially in our area where we don't get much of it. So that's something I highly recommend, is getting like a cheap Jeep, cheap 4x4 truck. I know cheap and 4x4 doesn't go together anymore, but something modern with fuel injection that don't have carburation, that you have to worry about the ice freezing and everything else that goes along with the cold naturedness of a carburetor. But something modern built in the 90s, even if it's like a Ranger, whatever, that has a working 4x4, and taking it off-road and understanding how things are off-road, because some of that translates to driving on the roadway with snow. The third consideration we're going to talk about is clothing for this situation. Now, the Snow Camo poncho is pretty cool, but it provides zero insulation. I'll throw up an affiliate link to that, and I want to let you know in the comments, I have a channel on Telegram for gear chat like that. I post gear deals on. I make a very tiny cut off of it. That money is going to help us grow the channel, help us buy more ammo, help us get better equipment, and actually pay for like some of the services that we use to edit this footage on. Anything you buy on there helps you. Like, I like win-win situations. That's one of the biggest things I want to talk about with that. Let me give you my 15-second ad. I like win-win situations. If you're taking something that you feel like you need, or a piece of gear that you wanted, and I'm making a cut off of it, but I'm giving you the best price, we both win, right? And I'm talking about, if it's $100, I might get 5. It's nothing to write home about, but if we build the volume, that helps the channel grow. And I want the channel to grow, and I know you do, because the views keep on going up every time we drop a new vid. Either way, help us, help me, help you, help me find you better gear, or let me help you find better gear, and you help me grow the channel. All right, back to number 3 we're going to talk about here, which is warm clothing for a situation like this. And it's, we got out for some drives around town, and if it wasn't for OPSEC, I was driving around town and I noticed that a lot of people honestly don't know how to dress for the long term. If something was to happen, if vehicles were immobile and we had a situation like this, you need to know, or you need not even necessarily to know, you need to have warm clothing to wear. So something layering, like real quick, what I'm wearing here, I actually have a thermal layer on under these enhanced Army combat pants. And then I actually have a grid fleece, like a grid fleece style hoodie that you can kind of see here. Grid fleece hoodie underneath this Scorpion OCP camo top. And one of the best things is like the Romanian Fleck Parka that we did a couple videos back. I'll annotate it here, maybe roll in some footage of it here. But something like that, that's got an inner liner, is great, because you can just throw on like a flannel or something underneath it, wear it over you, and you're going to be warm. But you need to consider your feet and your legs too. That's something else. Like, man, it takes a lot for my legs to get cold, but when they do, it fucking sucks. It really does, especially if you're out here LARPerating in the woods and you're down on the ground and moving around and your shit gets wet. It's gonna suck, especially if the wind's up. So thinking about that, getting some like base layers, level 1. I'm not gonna go in completely to that, because that's a whole video all in of its own. And I don't know if I exactly have the grounds to talk about cold weather, because the coldest it gets here is maybe single digits, and it's only single digits for maybe a week, maybe 2 at the most. So I'm not going to go fully into that. I just know what I need in my area, and so I keep enough for that. So something like a base layer, and then a nice warm outer layer that can help protect you. But that base layer is going to keep that initial warmth. And then if it gets wet, that's why I love thermals, just cheap thermals. You know, if it gets wet, it's going to dry out and it's not going to freeze you to death. You know, it freaking looks cool here. I'm not gonna lie, the woods and the snow look freaking awesome. I really like it. So another thing that I use this time around, keeping with the clothing and whatnot, is a M65 in M81 Woodland. That thing was awesome. I actually ran like a thermal lined flannel. That it's a little bit bigger on me, but that helps for layering. But I ran it with the M65 and then like a base layer t-shirt, something like that. And then that thing kept me warm for clearing my driveway, along with just, you know, some regular like true spec style BDU style pants that are a solid color. I didn't want to look tactical in my front yard clearing the driveway. But you know, the M81's a vibe now. I feel like a lot of times, since it's not really in service anymore, you can kind of get away with it more in public, where it's a little harder with our with our OCP. But you know, I feel like the M81's quickly becoming a vibe, and the M65 jackets can be had pretty cheap, and they're everywhere. They're more common than the Romanian Parkas. I may drop a link to some down below. Like I said, there'll be affiliate links, but if you're looking for a good one, and there's all kind of patterns in it still, and you can get a liner that's removable just like the Romanian Parka. So M65 is a damn good piece of jacket just to have for cold weather months and to get out in here, because it's tough. The moisture wasn't really coming through and hitting my inner flannel, which was great. It has a built-in hood. I mean, I'll roll in some B-roll with the M65 here. And then lastly, the last thing I want to talk about with clothing, having perfectly prepared clothing. I love hiking boots. I love a lot of tactical boots. A lot of those things are considered hot weather and maybe fall weather. The issue with those, like if you're doing a lot of rucking and things, we say a lot of the preppers and all that, and myself included, we try not to do waterproof boots. But in the snow where your stuff is going to be getting wet, your feet are going to be wet, that is the ultimate killer. Like if your feet start getting wet out here and it's below freezing, that's going to be a game killer, especially if you have to traverse long distances. You know, you need to be bringing stuff that you can use to dry your feet off and a change of socks. But it's still like when you get to a certain point and you're moving through literally frozen water, you're not going to be able to keep that water off your boots. So having something like these are just my basic work boots, and they turned out great. Sure, they're not tactical. You know, they're more old school, but these things have been great. They're leather, waterproof, steel toe Timberland boots, Timberland Pros. They have been just great for the cold weather. They keep my feet warm. They're non-slip, so even when they get packed of snow, they don't have these crazy treads, so they're easy to kind of kick off onto a tree or something like that if you get caked up with snow. But with the design, it doesn't really want to cake and stick, so it kind of self-cleans with the tread. These are pretty freaking awesome traversing in weather like this, where you don't want your feet to get wet and you want to keep moisture out. I highly recommend just having a good pair of work boots. You may pay more for them if they're leather, depending on the material. Most of the waterproof stuff I've seen, aside from the rubber muck boots, which make it hard to kind of get around in, you can't articulate as much. But either way, a good pair of like leather waterproof work boots is great to have, especially in your area that's more prone to, say, a lot of rain, cold winters, things like that. Let's move into number 4, and the last thing we're going to talk about, and that's food. We got a really good heads up before this started. We were not like hurting for food to begin with. We do a lot of meal prepping, so we keep a lot of food ready to go. It just makes life easier if you're on a diet and trying to lose weight. I highly recommend doing that, like just keeping food ready to go. You can grab and go. More convenient than fast food. Thinking about these things and the first initial reports that there could be something bad on the horizon, weather report, whatever, people aren't going to really rush. You're going to see some people starting to go to the grocery store, but they're not going to be rushing to the grocery store. Snow's falling here. Starting to heat up, and it's going to be gone. In those first reports, grocery stores are not going to be hit that hard. They're going to restock, you know? And I highly recommend, as soon as you hear that report, if you're behind on some things or whatever, if you're like us and you kind of do a weekly stock of the stuff that you eat and consume, go ahead and do it then. Go ahead and do it and get it out of the way, because there was an area, things I've seen on my local social media of people posting where they were just wiped out of eggs, milk, bread, the basics, right? Wiped out. And it really sped up the moment that they canceled schools. So consider your window before school cancellation, like initial report, school cancellation. This time in between is when you want to get your supplies. Because as soon as that school cancellations, you have all these people saying, well, crap, my kid doesn't have anything to eat. So they rush to the grocery store, buy all this crap, fill up their carts for the apocalypse, right? And so then that's when the shortages start. You know, they're going to start trickling up. It's a demand thing, but they're really going to hit as soon as they cancel schools. Try to make sure you have food to eat. And it goes along with the fuel that we were talking about, is having fuel to cook said fuel, eat food, or get dry goods that you can eat or whatever. Like Canned foods, a lot of that stuff, you don't have to heat up to eat it. It's already prepared. The last thing here goes back to the first issue that I had, really the only major issue that I had, but let's talk about customer service. Now, I've been on this earth a little bit long, like approaching 4 decades. And whenever I was younger, and even till about 5 years ago, customer service was a thing. And this is a side rant. Customer service, like, we have lost focus on customer service so badly, and just the downward spiral in the past 5 years is insane. You don't have places that stay open anymore. Whenever I was looking for the regulator, most of the people there were either on their phones or they were worried about when they were going to get to leave that night. Now, I come from a time frame that used to, whenever bad things were going on the night before, places stayed open later to get these last minute emergencies out of the way to make sure people were going to be okay. It's not the case anymore. And that's something that you need to realize going forward. Weather events, like what's going on here, that was very, very mild and mainly auto accidents because of idiots. But weather events like what's going on in California, what happened in North Carolina, parts of Georgia, parts of Florida, what happens to Florida all the time, what happened to Hawaii, all these things that happened in the past year are very, very big events that could happen at any time. They can happen anywhere. Natural events can occur anywhere on this earth that you reside. And it's going to be things that you don't expect. So you're not going to be totally prepared, but you want to prepare for what you can control, like having heat and the ability to cook and water to drink and food. Those are the 4 main things. You definitely want security to protect those things, but those are the 4 main things you need to think about going into it. That's the disaster. Maybe not necessarily like a crazy rogue government entity coming to get you, which is a possibility, but the higher probability is disaster and bad things. Just like those of you old enough to know about Katrina, bad things happen in disasters. And if you like this video, don't forget to drop a like or even a subscribe if you dig this kind of content, and let us know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Take care, everyone. God bless. This is XXL Dude reminding you that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.